Welcome to the Strength for the Day podcast, which is a daily Bible study with Dennis Fountain. We hope this time together will be challenging, sharpening, uplifting, encouraging, and strengthening to your Christian walk. Thank you for joining us, and we pray you are helped through today's study.
Hey, good morning. Welcome to Strength for the Day. We are wrapping up a series in the book of 2 Samuel, and we're actually wrapping up a couple of days early just because of Thanksgiving week, and then we'll dive into a few Thanksgiving episodes for our next two. And then in next week and the month of December 2024, we are going to cover four books. We're going to cover 1 John, 2 John, 3 John, and Jude, all in the month of December. And then Christmas week, I'm looking forward to the series we're going to do for those 5 episodes. We're going to look at some different characters of the Christmas story and some things we can learn. Of course, none of these will be an exhaustive study of the books or of those characters, but we'll cover what we can in 10 to 12 minutes. So today we are coming to 2 Samuel chapters 23 and 24. What we find first is we find David wrapping up really his life by giving some last words. You don't find David passing away until the book of 1 Kings, but we find David giving last words. We find a list of David's mighty men. We find David being driven by pride once again, even before his death. And then we find God redeeming everything and making some things right. And so here's what we're going to do. We're going to just dive in, and I want to kind of look at these things one by one, and then we'll wrap up with a quick challenge here in just a minute. David, 2 Samuel chapter 23 and verse number 1. Now these are the last words of David. Thus says David, the son of Jesse. Thus says the man raised up on high, the anointed of God, of the God of Jacob, and the sweet psalmist of Israel. The Spirit of the Lord spoke by me, and his word was on my tongue. The God of Israel said, the Rock of Israel spoke to me. He who rules over men must be just, ruling in the fear of God. And he shall be like the light of the morning when the sun rises, a morning without clouds, like the tender grass springing out of the earth by clear shining after rain. Although my house is not so with God, yet he has made me with an everlasting covenant, ordered in all things and secure. For this is my salvation and all my desire. Will he not make it increase? But the sons of rebellion shall all be as thorns thrust away, because they cannot be taken with hands. But the man who touches them must be armed with iron and the shaft of the spear, and they shall be utterly burned with fire in their place. While there is a lot that David says here, I really just want to key in on what he said in verse number 3, when he says this, he who rules over men must be just, ruling in the fear of God. You know, as David wraps up his life and his leadership and all of that, he gives this lesson. Hey, make sure that you are being driven by the fear of God. That fear of God has to do with not only realizing that he is a just God and a righteous God, but also having a reverence for him, living each day with a reverence for God, attached to everything that I say and everything that I do. This is not something that's just good for kings and rulers. This is something that's great for moms and dads and students and athletes and college kids, and whatever stage of life you're in, may you and I attach reverence to every decision we make. But then I see, secondly, today, David's mighty men. Now, I'm not going to read through this. You can go and read it. 2 Samuel chapter number 23, verse 8, all the way down through the end of the chapter. You find a number of people listed, and you find a number of the great actions that they had for David and in support of David. But really, they were just serving the Lord. And here's something that I find very interesting. When you go through a lot of these people, many of them are nameless people except for in 2 Samuel 23. There's a number of challenges that I gather from this. I think, first off, of being a support to the people around me. These men were a support to David. I think about being a support to the leadership around me. I think today of those around me at our church that support me and are an encouragement and go to battle with me and desire to pray for me and desire to serve alongside me. And what an encouragement that is to have people that serve alongside of us. So I think that we as believers, we should desire to be an encouragement to the leadership around us. So if you're in our church, I would encourage you, be an encouragement to me and to the other pastors on staff and to those that are serving each and every week. And then if you're not a part of our church, be an encouragement to your pastor, wherever you are. Man, be that person that says, hey, what can I do? How can I serve? How can I get involved? I find that in these mighty men, but then also I find an incredible picture of God's grace. Many of these men, if you did some research, they actually aren't even Hebrews. They were men that maybe joined up with David, that became a Jew or became a Hebrew. And in following the Lord, God allowed that. He put his grace on their life to use them. And then I really just find David receiving strength because of the people that God had placed around him. And I want to be a person that receives strength from the people that God places around me. Notice thirdly then, and I realize we're kind of bouncing around, but we'll tie all of this together here in just a minute. Thirdly, I see in chapter number 24, we see David desiring to number the people. It says in verse number 1, again, the anger of the Lord was aroused against Israel when he moved David against them to say, go number Israel and Judah. So the king said to Joab, the commander of the army who was with him, now go throughout all the tribes of Israel from the Dan to Beersheba and count the people that I may know the number of them. And Joab said to the king, now may the Lord your God add to the people 100 times more than there are, and may the eyes of my lord the king see it. But why does my lord the king desire this? Nevertheless, the king's word prevailed. And so David has this, and when it says there in verse 1, when it says that the anger of the Lord was aroused against David and he moved against Israel, he moved David against them to say, the idea here is that God allowed this to take place as a judgment. God knew that David's heart was filled with pride. The people of Israel had allowed themselves to slip away from the Lord. And so God allowed this to take place as a judgment over Israel. And David, in this moment, though, David was being driven by pride to want to know how full my kingdom is. And the Lord allowed that to happen because God was going to use it to bring judgment into the people of Israel's lives. But then I see verse number 10 down through verse number 17, God does judge this. He judges David's sin. He judges the sin of the people of Israel. And then as you go to verse number 18 down through verse number 25, here's what we find. We find an altar and a threshing floor that a sacrifice is made. David gets right with the Lord, and God blesses. Verse number 25, ending out 2 Samuel, says, and David built there an altar to the Lord and offered burnt offerings and peace offerings. And then notice what it says. So the Lord heeded the prayers for the land, and the plague was withdrawn from Israel. The judgment that had taken place was a plague for a few days that would take out a number of the people of Israel. But here you find David repenting. God, I should not have counted the people. I shouldn't have been driven by pride. And so, Lord, I'm praying that you would forgive and that you would heal our land. And God does. God uses this situation and he brings healing and forgiveness to the people of God. So what is all of that? How can we tie all of that together? So what thoughts are we talking about? All right, you find David's words to fear the Lord and attach reverence to every decision we make, reverence for the Lord. You find the list of the mighty men who encouraged David, and David found that strength because of them. We see God's grace in that. Then you find David's pride, God allowing David to be driven by pride and judgment coming on the people. And then you find the fact at the end of that God can still work. So what could be an application that we gather from all of this? Well, I really want to close with where David started. If you look at the life of David, and I summarized with this yesterday, David was a man who sought after the Lord. He was not perfect. David's life was riddled with war and with deceit and with sin. David's family was just broken up because of arrogance and because of the inability to choose the right thing. And you look at all of the insecurities of David, and you look at the sin of David, and we almost wonder, like, God, are you sure this is the right person? But then we look at the surrender of David. Time and time again, just coming back to the Lord and repenting and God using it. And where David started in 2 Samuel 24 is by simply looking to God and saying, God, all of this is about you. All of my decisions are for you. And God, I want to be used by you. When we look at this last 2 chapters, here's what I want us to be encouraged with. I want us to be encouraged with understanding God will always use and work through someone who surrendered to him. Every day, God will use someone who is surrendered to him. So today, as we wrap up the book of 2 Samuel, may we be challenged by the life of David and by the characters in this great book. May we be challenged to be surrendered to the Lord in every decision. I look forward to tomorrow as we dive into Psalm 100 for Thanksgiving Day. And as we wrap up this series, I just again encourage you, have a desire every day in your thoughts, your actions, your motives, and your love. Have a desire to be surrendered to the Lord. Have a great day, and we will see you in our next episode.